Okay, so with Oda having revealed that Summers has a mechanical heart, we have to ask some pretty important and weird questions like, is Garling a robot? Is the Abyss just a bunch of nanobots? Is Emo like an ancient AI of sorts? It's getting weird, but Summers having a mechanical heart and not a real one could have some actual huge implications for the Holy Knights, the Abyss, and of course One Piece overall. It's actually like a really freaky and weird thing to reveal in this chapter, and I really think we should spend more time focusing on it, because even though Summers is not maybe the most serious character, this seems like a massive hint at what Emo has actually been up to by Oda. Because just like the Pacifista and Seraphim that Vegapunk has constructed fairly recently, Emo's strongest forces might just be cybernetic, ancient, indestructible, soldiers that have infinite regen abilities. And maybe even crazier, the Abyss as a power system itself and its seemingly magic powers might actually probably just be a lost ancient technology from the first world of One Piece or even before that. I mean, Emu might just be the wizard behind the curtain, right? Using technology, making it seem like their powers are this crazy magic, while in reality just using technology that has been lost for millennia. And weirdly enough, the most dangerous example of that technology, for all that we know now, might just be Emu, like a renegade AI maybe, but most of these kind of insane ideas that now seem more possible kind of spin off, of course, from Summers in this chapter, my new least favorite cyborg in One Piece. Congratulations, Queen, you've been bumped up in the rankings. Haha, good job. And once again, to hit this home where this is coming from, it does seem like Summers just has a mechanical heart, and I just have so many questions about that I'm sure will be answered in like 50 chapters or 100 chapters from now. But my biggest question is probably, why? Like, why wouldn't his heart just regenerate like the rest of his body does? If Emo's immortality seemingly lets the Holy Knight's bodies recover from any terrible injury or any damage, even to their brain, as we see with, was it Saturn? I think so. Then the heart should probably heal too, right? So I don't think it's that Summers just has this because his heart gave out and he needed an Abyss-powered pacemaker or anything. It's really uncertain at this point whether this is a trait that all the Holy Knights share, maybe even the Gorosei, or whether it's just a Summers thing, or it could be a trait exclusive to those with the abyssal tier covenants with Emu, like the top tier, top 13 people. After all, we do think that Summers' tattoo might show him being a tier 1 contractor. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean. Like, this mechanical heart could be a whole new Holy Knight weakness, which would be a pretty great way to give some of the Straw Hats who haven't unlocked Conqueror's Haki, a little bit more play in the Final War 2. Should they not unlock Conqueror's Haki? I mean, obviously we can't have Chopper Conqueror's Haki, though it would be cool. Actually, why not? Why not? I want all of them to have Conqueror's Haki, even though it's not going to happen. Now, I was pretty bummed out when I found out that the secret to bypassing the mortality was just basically more Conqueror's Haki or better Conqueror's Haki, but if this would give a secondary weakness that lets someone like, say, Usopp take out some of the government's highest tier soldiers, I'd be absolutely on board with that. But if the Holy Knights all should actually turn out to have this mechanical heart, it kind of changes everything we thought about Emu and the Holy Knights and the One Piece world. Once again, it's been happening a lot recently. And again, I just don't think it makes much sense for it to just be Summers. It feels more like a very central part of being a Holy Knight Oda is finally revealing here, because otherwise his regeneration should just rebuild his human heart over and over again on top of the mechanical one, which sounds like, like some scary Black Mirror stuff. Now, I'm even wondering at this point if the black mist that appears when the Abyss powers are used are maybe just a swarm of nano machines or nanobots that come from the mechanical heart to rebuild their host over and over again, on like a cellular or even molecular level. There's just one giant problem I see with that idea, even though I think it's really cool, and I mean giant as literally as possible, because it's of course Harold. At least as far as we saw in the flashback, he never underwent open heart surgery, he just magically apparently got some sick new ink and then could regenerate from any wound. But I do think that there are two ways that this could absolutely still work. First off, the Covenant itself could actually just transform the Holy Knight's heart without the need for literally transplanting a mechanical heart inside. Or alternatively, maybe this mechanical heart is reserved for only the most dedicated soldiers, those with abyssal covenants, which Summers seems to have since his tattoo looks a lot more detailed and intricate than the ones we saw on Harold or Shanks. So could this high-tier covenant very literally mean giving up your free will and humanity itself to Emu? I mean, it's actually kind of perfect to show us with Summers having this feature because he's one of the most, pun very much intended by Oda, I think, heartless characters that we have seen in the story. He has this very twisted and depraved view of love that kind of perfectly fits a character who literally does not have a human real heart. And I hope you'll come to agree that this idea works spookily well with lots of Celestial Dragon aspects and parts of Emu's contract overall, because maybe the reason certain Holy Knights don't age is because this immortality just comes from their consciousness living on in a semi-mechanical state, robot bodies that just don't age, or, nanobots that keep just, I don't know, like kind of like reassembling them, or it's like basically, like a hive mind almost, where like the consciousness is implanted in. Very spooky, very like, sci-fi-esque, but that's kind of where One Piece has weirdly been going to. And even though I gotta say, seeing that Summers is probably something like a cyborg or a hybrid thing really threw me off at first, I kind of actually get to see the vision the more I really think about it, which Oda is playing with here, because this could play out in some very, very cool and impressive ways later in the story. I can actually picture it right now, like the final battle up at Maurizio, right? The Straw Hats finally think they've won, the Holy Knights seemingly defeated, and then the sound of gears turning, and then enter Mecha Garling, chomp, chomp, pew, pew, and then they combine into like a Holy Knight Megazord or something, but then in the other corner, Frankie's Thousand Sunny Voltron, pew, woo! Sorry, not sure what got into me there, but I can imagine it. Well, I really just don't think that Oda can resist finishing out the series without having at least one giant robot battle. Let's be real, it's way too big of an Oda thing to not do. He loves mechas. It's gonna happen. And in a way, even though it feels kind of like a left turn here, since Emu's powers seem really like dark magic coded, there's just so much precedent for it in the story. Oda's been giving us robots and cyborgs pretty much forever at this point. Laboon, literally at the start of the Grand Line, is a cyborg, a semi-cyborg. There is a cyborg on the Straw Hat crew, so why can't the villains get some robots too? I mean, they already have a lot. There's Kuma, who now seems like foreshadowing for some of the Holy Knights, I think. With the entire also being a real person who then traded his humanity and, free will to the world government in order to achieve something good in the world. His story specifically actually has some similarities with King Harold, who became a blade of God to help Elbaf, while Kuma allowed himself to become a cyborg to protect his daughter Bonnie. And now, because of Kuma's sacrifice, some of the world government's strongest forces, the Pacifista and Seraphim, have been created as well, based on ancient technology that Vegapunk found, by the way. What a coincidence, which are these cybernetic soldiers loyal only to the Celestial Dragons, and Bonnie too, I guess. Kind of cool cheat code. And it would actually be kind of insane if we learned that Saint Saturn, the guy who directed Vegapunk to turn Kuma into a cyborg and keep evolving these cybernetic soldiers, had actually already undergone the same process himself many hundreds or thousand years ago. And I'm just saying, we see his skull after Emo terminated him, but we never get to see his heart. But if the Holy Knights are actually just mechanical, or at least their hearts are, what does that mean for the Abyss as a power system overall? Well, like I mentioned earlier, that inky black mist and flamey stuff on the Abyss, Emu's shadowy, unshaped body, the regenerative powers or teleportation, it might all just be a form of ancient, extremely advanced futuristic technology. Like, have you ever heard the quote that magic is just science that we don't understand yet? No? Well, then go educate yourself. What are you doing? There's more out there than just manga, bro. It's based on a statement actually from a science fiction writer called Arthur C. Clarke, the author of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Great movie, which I actually suspect Oda has taken at least some inspiration for, but that's kind of for a different video, but it fits the pattern pretty perfectly. I know we've talked about this on the channel before, especially with the big reveal from Vegapunk that the Ancient Kingdom was this crazy technologically advanced thing that, Vegapunk's tech doesn't even come close to. I mean, getting into One Piece and into the series, I definitely assumed for the longest time that devil fruits were just straight up magic, but especially during the Eket Island arc where we finally got the big reveal that the Ancient Kingdom was crazy advanced and Vegapunk's tech doesn't even come close to it, the #1 science guy in the world describing devil fruits as a form of technology from the past based on people's dreams. Like, Vegapunk has been recreating so much tech from the Ancient Kingdom and earlier, technology that was largely lost to time that he says his version is so much inferior. There's then also the endless power source, the Mother Flame, based on the earlier, much more powerful Forbidden Sun. He fixed up Emeth, a literal giant sentient robot from the past with a whole personality and who's just self-conscious. It just kind of seems like one thing after another. Things in the series that seem fantastic and magical just turn out to be actually a form of crazy advanced tech that we just can't really comprehend. And in the mural, we also see what I think is the first world depicted as this giant dystopian industrial city with skyscrapers and giant gears, basically polluting the planet and mining. And before the sky races came down to Earth from the moon, they were rocking entire armies of robotic automata and had a whole electric grid. And again, all these automata seem to have their own personalities and just full-on sentience. And again, devil fruits were also thought to be a magic system for the longest time, but now we've kind of seen them described as a technology, with Vega even pulling the lineage factor / bloodline elements / DNA, right, from them to create new artificial versions, and also doing some crazy DNA stuff and splicing and basically like CRISPR DNA experiments with the Lunarians and all of the warlords. Point is, it's all technology. It's technology all the way down that gets more advanced and better and crazier the further you go back in time, kind of the opposite idea of our real world. We kind of are very used to this idea that technology always moves forward and gets better, and that it, gets worse and more primitive the further we go back. But Oda's very clearly playing with the idea that no, there was a crazy, highly advanced civilization back in the past that got obliterated, either destroying itself or awakening something or doing something that they shouldn't have with a war or something. And then technology kind of got worse and worse from there. My personal idea is that the first world had the best tech, second world had inferior tech, but still very advanced, and maybe they came up with like some original ideas like devil fruits. I think they're from the second world. And then the third world is basically just nuked back to the Stone Age, now only starting to recover some of that technology. Once again, if you've maybe read The Wheel of Time, it's very much that idea, like we're basically living in a post-apocalyptic world where advanced crazy technology has been lost to time and history and gets rediscovered sometimes. And so since Emu's powers look a lot like magic still at this point, at first when I saw the Holy Knight's powers and the Gorosei's powers, I kind of thought it was gonna set up something crazy like a science versus magic conflict, very anime I guess, but now I'm actually not so sure. I'm kind of leaning towards the Holy Knights now also maybe using a sort of technology. And if you allow me to cook just for one more second here, I'm gonna put on my literary analysis hat for a moment. Now, obviously, Oda would never put any political message in One Piece. I think we all know that. I know that after hearing all the smartest people on the internet say that, but hear me out for a moment. Is Emu big oil? Like, metaphorically, Emu has this shadowy, inky black body, like oil, like crude oil. Okay, like we're getting weird, but that's what you're here for. I hope so. During Cat Island, we learned that the sea levels of the One Piece world have been steadily rising in a very clear allegory for what is basically modern day climate change, right? Because in case no one told you, our sea levels have been rising as well. And who's personally responsible for these rising sea levels? Emu. Emu's powers seem contrasted with the Forbidden Sun, which feels like a clean energy source that has more in common with, like nuclear fusion tech, yet also holds its very own dangers. Nuclear tech obviously being seen even more controversial in Japan than in any other country on Earth for obvious reasons, right? Whereas Emu's oil would have this, corruptive influence and allow them to maintain a clear hierarchical control based on a limited resource. The Abyss even seems to burn with black flames when it uses those very same powers. I mean, Emu controls an army of mechanical creations, the world's wealth, the world's means of trade and transportation, and so on, and so on, and so forth. Like, honestly, I could totally see Emu being like a living fossil fuel, a remnant left from the first world that looks a lot like an industrial hellscape that's polluting the ocean in the mural itself that's still impacting the modern era. Now, just so you don't get me wrong, I don't think Oda's going to give Emu the oil no me route or anything super literal like that, but more as a metaphor, I kind of like that idea, and I feel like it plays into the themes of the story pretty well, and kind of relevant right now for obvious reasons too. But I will say I don't think it's even my favorite take on the Abyss being technology revelation either. I think there is an even more interesting angle to all of this. So now I need to address the Zunisha-sized elephant in the room, because if Emu is actually using technology, then why are they so obviously using magic? You might still be asking at this point, Manu, how can you even think that when this guy has been slinging pentagrams around, has a giant spell book? Mechanical hearts aside, everything else we've seen so far kind of points to some evil, dark devil magic. Clearly, Emu's not using tech, they're a wizard. Yeah, a wizard of Oz. Yeah, that's right. You're not mistaken. You heard me correctly. You maybe even caught the hint at the beginning of the video, and yes, I am about to explain that One Piece is actually a version or a take on the Wizard of Oz. And in charge of it all is Emu, our Oz, the great and powerful godly being who makes themselves look like an all-powerful magical wizard, but in reality is just using tricks, tech, and illusions. A facade crafted with crazy, ancient, advanced technology that people just don't understand. Maybe Emu's weird shadowy body is actually just being piloted by some other guy somewhere else. And I'll be real, when I saw Summer's mechanical heart, this was one of the first thoughts I had. My brain just immediately went like, Tin Man! That's the Tin Man with the iron mechanical heart. And I don't think I'm alone here, because some of my team members made the exact same conclusion. And before you get at me, yes, I know that the Tin Man's whole thing is that, he doesn't have a heart. Still, my team and I actually went on this whole rant in our team meeting about how, actually a bunch of One Piece lines up pretty well with the story of Wizard of Oz. So if you'd be interested in watching that video specifically, please let me know in the comments. I don't think it would be a video I'd be super confident in making, but if you actually want to see it, let me know. If there's enough comments, I'll make it, because it would be really fun to write. And also, to be fair, one of my team members really wants to force me singing Defying Gravity in a video, but for this video, I'm just kind of focused on Emu being like the Wizard of Oz in the sense of being a man behind the curtain, pretending to be this magical, godly being, while in reality, just using technology really, really smartly. I actually think it would make a lot of sense, because we do know that Oda does take some inspiration from the Wizard of Oz already. Back in the day, he actually drew a picture of Dorothy and the gang that's included in one of the Color Walk books. We've heard about the Emerald City in One Piece before, so drawing on this aspect of the story wouldn't be like a super crazy out of left thing, because Oda's always pulling from tons of different literary references or mythologies for different arcs and parts of the story. But bringing it back to Emu, think about one of Emu's biggest major goals. They want to erase the past. They want the Void Century to be, well, void, completely forgotten, but we've really never gotten a true explanation for why. I mean, part of it could be maintaining the illusion. If people don't know about the crazy advanced tech from the first and second world, then yeah, Emu's powers just seem like godly, incomprehensible magic. Though I will say the real incomprehensible magic is that of my Patreons, who dazzle me with their majesty every single day because they help make this channel possible and also help me afford to pay my amazing art team and, my editors and make assets for the videos and thumbnails, which you can download on Patreon if you support us there. It's been a lot of fun diving into, actually, little side rant, sorry, while we're on the plug, and you might be skipping this anyways. If you're not, I've been really getting into compositing, which is how you put together anime, like images and take different parts like the characters and the backgrounds and add effects and kind of make it look like an actual scene. That's why the thumbnails look the way I do, because I've been kind of obsessed with that recently, and I bought a really cool book. It's this one, it's in Japanese, but it kind of teaches you how to like composite properly. It's like such a cool book. There's not that many resources out it, but if you're curious how people animate and how like anime actually looks really good and what makes good anime versus bad anime, like from a visual standpoint, you should check out compositing. It's very, very interesting. I've been like obsessed with it. That's why I've been maybe going a little bit overboard with the thumbnails. But in case you're wondering why they look the way they do, I've just been having fun trying to make them look like anime scenes, and I've been reading up on it. Little side rant, back to the video. So, let's look at Emu's list of powers. There's the summoning circles, that's just teleportation, can be easily done with technology. We know that from other stories. There's the grimoire, but that also used teleportation, and Emu used it to summon a gun, which is also a form of technology, as opposed to just casting lightning bolt or something like that. The Domi Reversi and Covenant get a little bit trickier, but I do think that there absolutely could still be a lot of technological ways to be doing those too. I mean, if the tattoos, or really the inky black shadows, are actually just swarms of nanobots like we talked about earlier, they could just be literally infesting or restructuring the bodies and transforming and or mind controlling their hosts while appearing to be this magical substance or magical ability tied to Emu, when Emu's entire black shade might just be a swarm of microbots and he's literally splitting a part of his black blob to put onto other people and infest their body. I think the biggest problem with this is the interaction maybe with Haki and how Luffy and Loki specifically seem immune to Emu's abilities, though if the immunity does come from their devil fruit specifically, and devil fruits are a form of technology too, then that still works pretty well, especially if Loki's and Luffy's fruits have been specifically shown to be special fruits or special forms, god forms specifically in a way, right? So that would kind of make sense there as well. But if Emu's body is actually a swarm of nanobots, then what is Emu themselves? And I'm kind of scared to honestly even toss this idea out there, because if it turns out to be true, I might actually hate it, low-key, or I could love it if Oda actually kind of pulled it off, but it would at least be controversial. Could Emu, like legitimately, I'm asking this for real, could Emu actually be an ancient rogue AI? Dude, if Oda's big bad of One Piece actually ends up being an artificial intelligence, then like, wow, good job calling that. That would be extremely relevant to everything going on in the real world, like One Piece has been overall recently, oddly, when his character was first introduced, right? So I don't know, maybe the hints were there all along. Let's just explore the idea, right? Whether you think is like totally ridiculous, let's just explore the idea so you know like what the points are. You know who else has a 3-letter name and a creepy red eye? That's Hell 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was written by Arthur C. Clarke, the sci-fi writer that I mentioned earlier, with the quote about magic just being science that we don't understand yet. Coincidence? I think so, probably. Yes, that's probably just a coincidence. But does Emu being AI actually make sense for the story? Well, I mean, it could follow with the classic pattern of an evil AI going completely rogue and destroying civilization. The Nerona Emu, who was one of the world government's founders, may have been taken over by this ancient AI being unleashed and then corrupting their own body. Then it resumed its directive to building a perfect world, which might have been its original instruction, but in doing so is trying to cleanse the world of all impurities, including those pesky stinking humans who don't do exactly what they say. Maybe Emu spends all that time in a flower room because they're pretending at being alive and surrounding themselves with life. And going really cheesy storytelling here, but it wouldn't be the first time, maybe their obsession with Lily is just because all Emu ever really wanted was to learn how to actually love. And obviously this angle on Emu is very speculative and depends on how things kind of shake out with what we learn about Summer's mechanical heart, but a theory with Lily specifically I am way more sure about and is actually super relevant is how I really think that Lily founded Amazon Lily and why she did that. She escaped this toxic possible robot and moved to the middle of the Calm Belt, enacting a 1,000-year plan to ensure that the next Joy Boy would arrive someday to take Emu down, and you can learn all about that in this theory video right here. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, thanks so much to our fantastic Patreons, and I will see you in the next video on Thursday.